Part 1.
Customer phoning a company representative to complain about her new purchase. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, is this the Dynamo Motorcycle Company?
Yes, it is. How can I help you?
Well, I have an instruction manual here for your new electric motorcycle, but I'm not satisfied with the purchase at all.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But don't worry, I'm sure we can sort this out. Before we do anything, can you tell me the model number?
At the top of the instruction manual here it gives the model number RTY34.
TY34. Okay. Now, what's the nature of your complaint?
It's many things, actually. The biggest problem is that you say in your manual that the battery will take the motorcycle 30 kilometres.
That's right.
Well, it's lucky to take me 8. The battery is usually flat by then, often leaving me stuck at the side of the road.
Are you sure you're charging it correctly?
I'm fairly sure. I follow all the instructions and plug it in for a long time.
And are you sure you charge it for the required 3 hours?
I charge it until the charging light goes off, and that's 2 hours, so that should be enough. And there's a serious design fault with this motorcycle. When you're riding it, there's no meter to show you how much power is left, so you actually don't know when the machine is going to stop working.
There's a voltage gauge.
Yes, but that tells you nothing. The needle fluctuates about from 55 to 45, so whatever it says is meaningless.
According to the manual, you're meant to charge the battery if the needle falls under 50 volts.
But even when you charge it, it can go below 45. As I said, the needle just waves all over the place. The result is that I'm always worried that the bike will leave me stranded in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Sure, but what are you going to do about it?
Unfortunately, we don't have a refund policy, but if you take the bike to one of our shops, our mechanics will look at it. Perhaps there's a problem that we can fix. The gauge, for example.
The other problem is the battery. I actually weighed it, and it's almost 6 kilograms, yet you say in your manual that it weighs only 3. I can barely pick the thing up, so it's not 3 kilograms at all.
Maybe you purchased the wrong model by mistake.
I doubt that very much. Basically, I think I've been defrauded, and I'd like to know what you're going to do about it.
All right, I'll put you through to our complaints department.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Hello?
Complaints department here. Apparently you have a complaint?
Yes, I do. Let me tell you all about...
It's all right. Our representative has already informed me about your problem. It's probably just a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can work something out. Right now, I need to take down some details.
All right.
Can I have your name, please?
Jessie Parkinson. That's Jessie and Parkinson, Parkinson. Parkinson.
All right, what shall we list this complaint under? Parts, service, or performance?
Well, the meter isn't accurate at all, so that's parts, isn't it?
Yes, perhaps, but you do feel more generally that the motorcycle doesn't meet the operational standards as advertised, so it's probably better to tick performance here.
Can we tick both, parts and performance?
No, we can only tick one, so let's not call it parts. We'll go with performance. Now, we may post some further forms and questionnaires to you, so would you mind giving me your address?
Certainly, it's 45 Melrose Road.
Melrose, M-E-L and Rose. Okay, now, your phone number?
Just use my mobile phone. That's 0928 982 453.
453. Okay, and if we have any follow-up questions, what time is best for ringing you? Morning, afternoon, night time?
Well, I work as a secretary from 9 to 5, but I do get a lunch break which gives me some free time. This break used to be 12:30 to 1:30, but then it changed to an hour later, so it's best to ring me at 2 p.m. since the break now starts at 1:30.
All right. That's all for now. We just need to do our own investigation and we'll probably ring you back tomorrow. I'm sure we can get to the bottom of this.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear an extract from a talk about employment interviews. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Today I have with me Sandy Richardson of the local Workforce Center, and she'll be talking about that critical step towards the goal of employment, the interview. Sandy, what is an interview for, and what's the best way to approach it?
A job interview is simply a meeting between you and a potential employer to discuss your qualifications and see if there is a fit. The employer wants to verify what they know about you and talk about your qualifications. If you have been called for an interview, you can assume that the employer is interested in you. The employer has a need that you may be able to meet, so it's your goal to identify that need and convince the employer that you're the one for the job. As everyone knows, interviews can be stressful, but when you're well prepared, there's no reason to panic. Preparation is the key to success in a job search, and you can begin by collecting together all the documents you may need for the interview, such as extra copies of your resume, lists of references, and letters of recommendation. You could also take some work samples, selecting from what you have designed, drawn, or written, for instance. And make sure you have a pen and pad of paper for taking notes. The next step is to find out about the post. The more you know about the job, the employer, and the industry, the better prepared you will be to target your qualifications. Always request a job description from the employer and research employer profiles at the Chamber of Commerce or local library. You could also try to network with people who work for the company or with employees of companies associated with it. The next step is to match your qualifications to the requirements of the job. A good approach is to write out your qualifications along with the job requirements. Think about some standard interview questions and how you might respond. Most questions are designed to find out more about you, your qualifications, or to test your reactions in a given situation. If you don't have any experience or skills in a required area, think about how you might compensate for those deficiencies.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
During an interview, it's important that you be yourself. Get a good night's sleep and plan your travel to be there in plenty of time so that you're not arriving out of breath with 30 seconds to spare. Don't, though, present yourself for the interview too early, 10 minutes at most. In the interview, listen carefully to each question asked. Take your time in responding and make sure your answers are positive. It's important to express a good attitude and show that you're willing to work, eager to learn, and are flexible. If you are unsure of a question, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. In fact, it's sometimes a good strategy to close a response with a question for the interviewer. In general, focus on your qualifications and look for opportunities to personalize the interview. Briefly answer questions with examples of how you responded in comparable situations, from either your life or previous job experiences. Something you should avoid are yes or no responses to questions, but don't dwell too long on non-job related topics. Use caution if you are questioned about your salary requirements. The best strategy is to avoid the question until you have been offered a job. Questions about salary asked before there is a job offer are usually screening questions that may eliminate you from consideration, so be warned. On the other hand, it isn't inappropriate to show your enthusiasm if your first impressions of the interview and of the employer are good ones. So, if the job sounds like what you are looking for, say so. Keep in mind that the interview is not over when you are asked if you have any questions. Come prepared to ask a couple of specific questions that again show your knowledge and interest in the job. Close the interview in the same friendly, positive manner in which you started. When the interview is over, leave promptly. Don't overstay your time. Think about the interview and learn from the experience. Evaluate the success and failures. The more you learn from the interview, the easier the next one will become. You'll become much more confident. To close, here are a few more tips. First, maintain good eye contact throughout the interview and be aware of nonverbal body language. Second, dress a step above what you would wear on the job. Go to the hairdressers, have a shave, etc. Remember that your appearance is a key indicator of whether you have the right attitude, so it can pay to give some thought to how you look. And finally, don't be a clock watcher.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You will hear a student union officer's speech.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi there. May I wish you a very warm welcome to Ealing College, and more especially to the Student Union. The Student Union is run by 4 sabbatical officers, of which I am one. As the President, I am charged with the overall day-to-day running of the Union itself, according to established policies within the Constitution. We also have a brilliant staff team who'll help us, and you'll meet them when you have 5 minutes to drop in and see us. The last year has seen the Student Union grow from incorporating a bar and a few officers with a small shop into being a thriving concern, which controls, to its credit, 2 bars, a cafe bar or restaurant, a shop, a comprehensive welfare department, and numerous offices. All this has been achieved by sheer hard work and dedication on the part of last year's sabbatical team and staff, who overcame many obstacles and teething problems, but won through in the end. This year, our aims as a team will be to consolidate on what has already been achieved, and to secure the future of the Union. With the new post of Vice President, Social and Communications, our main emphasis will be on communications within the college, which has always proved a problem in the past, but one which we hope to improve upon this year. One way will be the regular publication of a Student Union magazine, so all you budding journalists, come on down.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
We are very aware that a lot of you have never had any contact with student unions before, and don't know what they are or what they can do for you. So basically, here's a quick rundown. If you have any problems at all, either when you start college or throughout your time here, don't hesitate to drop in the SU office in the North Building and see Pat, our office assistant. She will be able to help you with most of your day-to-day general inquiries, or if she can't, she will direct you to one of our staff who can. Myself and the other 3 vice presidents are here every day, and if you need to see us, just fix a time with Pat, and we'll be only too happy to help you. By the way, queries or problems can range from a late grant check, finding a place to live and academic matters, right through to the best places to eat, directions to the bar, or somebody blocking you in the car park. We'll give anything our best shot. Please remember, while you're at Ealing, that going to college is not just about education. Make sure you enjoy yourself as well, because believe me, time will fly once you're here. Ealing is a really good place to live, as there is lots to see and do. And don't forget, the metropolis of central London is only 20 minutes away by tube. Finally, the Student Union is an organisation run by students for students. So if there is anything you don't agree with, or you have any new ideas, please come along to the Union General Meetings and don't be afraid to speak up. Or you could give up a little of your time and stand for the Executive Committee, which is made up of students who help us out with lots of interesting things. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the sabbaticals of the last 2 years who have worked so hard. My very special thanks goes to Winston, Martin and Peter and all the staff who not only did a great job, but have been my good friends as well. Lots of luck and success for your year at Ealing. Work hard, but play hard as well.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4.
Now listen to the second part of the lecture. As you listen, complete the notes below.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Many typically American characteristics, individualism, self-reliance, informality, punctuality, and directness, are a result of those values mentioned earlier. Other national traits could also be identified, however. 1. Americans cooperate. Although often competitive, Americans also have a good sense of teamwork and cooperate with others to achieve a goal. 2. Americans are friendly, but in their own way. In general, friendships among Americans tend to be shorter and more casual than friendships among people from other cultures. This has something to do with American mobility and the fact that Americans do not like to be dependent on other people. Americans also tend to compartmentalize friendships, having friends at work, family friends, friends on the softball team, etc. 3. Americans ask a lot of questions, some of which may to you seem pointless, uninformed, or elementary. Someone you have just met may ask you very personal questions. No impertinence is intended. The questions usually grow out of a genuine interest. 4. Americans tend to be internationally naive. Many Americans are not very knowledgeable about international geography or world affairs. They may ask uninformed questions about current events and may display ignorance of world geography. Because the US is not surrounded by many other nations, some Americans tend to ignore the world. 5. Silence makes Americans nervous. Americans are not comfortable with silence. They would rather talk about the weather than deal with silence in a conversation. 6. Americans are open and usually eager to explain. If you do not understand certain behavior or want to know what makes Americans tick, do not hesitate to ask questions. Just as values and traits differ somewhat from one culture to another, so do the personal habits associated with good manners and courtesy. While very often there does not seem to be any particular reason why a particular way of doing something is considered good manners, observing these cultural rules will make Americans more comfortable with you, and therefore you with them. It is, of course, impossible to cover all the possibilities here. If you are unsure in a situation, just ask. Americans like to be helpful. 1. Queuing up or lining up is essential. Courtesy requires that you do not push from behind, stand next to the person being helped, or cut into a line. If you should accidentally bump someone, you should say, "Excuse me." 2. Americans blow their noses into a tissue. Spitting, clearing phlegm, or sniffing as from a cold are considered rude. 3. It is considered poor manners to slurp, chew noisily, or open your mouth while chewing. 4. Questions are seen as a good way of getting acquainted, but questions about a person's age, financial affairs, cost of clothing or personal belongings, religious affiliations and sex life are considered too personal for questioning, except between very close friends. 5. Men generally do not hold hands or link arms in public with other men. This is somewhat more acceptable between women and quite common between men and women. Now, a few words about personal safety. Unfortunately, in the US, one must be aware of crimes. It is wise to be especially careful until you are familiar with the community in which you live. Remember that good judgment and common sense can significantly reduce chances of having an unpleasant and perhaps harmful experience. Basic safety rules include the following. 1. Do not walk alone at night. 2. When you leave your room, apartment, or automobile, make sure that all doors are locked and all windows are secured. 3. Do not carry too much cash or wear jewellery of great value. 4. Never accept a ride from a stranger. Do not hitchhike and do not pick up hitchhikers. 5. Be careful of purses and wallets, especially in crowded metropolitan areas where there may be purse snatchers and pickpockets. 6. If a robber threatens you, at home or on the street, try not to resist unless you feel that your life is in danger and you must fight or run away. Give up your valuables as calmly as you can and observe as much as possible about the robber to tell the police when you report the crime. A final note. Keep an open mind. Don't judge what you see as right or wrong, but make it a challenge to try to understand the variety of American behaviours which you may observe. You certainly do not have to participate in something you disagree with, but you can try to understand it. This will help you build an attitude of intelligent and liberated respect for cultures, both your own and others.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.